Hi, I'm Nathan from Serious Geeks, and this is the very first episode in a new mini-series I'm going to do, focusing on Space Marine units that are going to be run in the new 9th edition Codex. Titled, How Good Could They Be? Is going to focus on individual units in a speculative sense, using whatever leaks and information we have got to hand. The very first unit we're going to focus on is going to be Space Marine Scouts. As you can see here, Space Marine Scouts are alone in the Space Marine army in that they are maintaining the single wound on their profile compared to all other Space Marines. Looking at the weapons that are listed here, you can also see that their weapons options are not going to be changing. The easy extrapolation we can make of this is that Space Marine Scouts are not going to change dramatically in points cost when the 9th edition Codex does come out in October. It's important to point out that some of their weapons might very well change in points cost simply because they are changing in their effect, but that would be on a weapon by weapon basis, and I don't think it would notably change the points comparison between Scouts and other units. As such, we know that Scouts are going to be a relatively cheap unit to use on the table. The real question is, are they going to maintain their position as a troops choice? The leaked table of contents appears to have the Scouts in the same sort of area as where all the Elite's choices are. This, of course, could have a detrimental effect on how people take Scouts in their army or whether they think it's worthwhile, but at the moment we can't make that assumption, so I will just compare Scouts to Space Marines in general and what they can do on the tabletop. First thing to consider is that they're going to be cheaper. So the Marine Horde is not going to exist very much anymore, simply because 2 wound Marines means that all Marines are going to go up in price. Even a Tactical Marine, which is not going to have the same amount of attacks as an Intercessor Marine or a better Bolter, is going to be slightly cheaper as a base cost, but not by much than the actual Intercessor themselves. As such, you could probably expect an easy 5-point difference per Scout to a Tactical Marine. Over the course of several units across an army, this can equate to quite a large sum of points that you're going to save. Of course, you're losing out on the ability to have toughness 4, 2 wound, 3+ armor save models, but in exchange for that, you're getting models that can actually be deployed around the table for relatively cheap cost. Board control and taking objectives is the key to winning games in 9th edition, and as such, Scouts give you that capacity at a relatively cheap cost compared to your other infantry. Tournament armies have often used cheap Scout units to be able to hold objectives, usually in their own backfield or across the table hidden away somewhere, and that is probably the most efficient use of your points if you're not going to be contributing to the battle. Marines are generally so expensive, the last thing you want to do is spend 150-200 points on a unit that's just going to hang at the back or to the side behind obscuring terrain and achieve nothing except for holding a bit of objective and a bit of board control. Of course, that doesn't mean you should never use a 200-point unit to hold an objective or take a bit of board control. What I'm saying is that a game with multiple objectives is going to rack up your points pretty fast if you're going to have to take 150-point units for each objective. You're going to need those points to take the fight to the enemy and therefore stopping them from achieving their own secondary objectives. This to me is where Scouts are going to come in. They're going to be a unit that you can spend a smaller number of points on that can hold an objective or give you a bit of board control that will spare enough points in your actual army itself to be able to take on the enemy and take away their ability to achieve their own secondary objectives. So basically, in summary, what I'm saying is a Scout unit should be a support element to the rest of your army, there to hold the objective and provide a little bit of cover and fire where possible, but that not being the real role of what they're doing, because they should be really giving you board control and scoring you victory points on the objectives that they claim. As such, the weapons you give them should reflect this. The different weapons available to Scouts reflects what position they're going to take on the tabletop. If they're armed with bolters, they probably should hang towards the centre of the table or slightly moving out towards the flanks to hold those objectives. If the Scout's role is to hold an objective that is in your deployment zone, then consider the longer ranged options available. Sniper rifles are actually fairly useful for that range, and heavy bolters and missile launchers can also provide a little bit of fire support that you can give to the rest of your army, though bear in mind adding heavy weapons to the unit does impede a little bit on line of sight issues, and if they're hiding just holding the objective, they won't get much use out of those weapons, so consider that very carefully. The last option for Scouts is as a harassment unit, or one that takes the fight to the enemy in one way or another. If, for example, you give the unit bolt pistols and close combat weapons, the unit will have a little bit of capacity up close and cause a few problems for any shooting units that are hanging at the back, or an objective holding unit that may be thinking it's safe from the rest of your army, but your deployment of scouts has made them under threat very early on. Likewise, shotguns appear to be quite useful now in this new edition of the game, as they seem to be going up to range 18. Many people may not be familiar with what an Astartes shotgun does. Like most shotguns, it goes to 1 extra pip of strength when it's within half range, which for an Astartes shotgun means it goes to strength 5 at 9 inches. Consider this for a unit that has infiltrated its way closer to the enemy and has, say, 10 models in there, all with Astartes shotguns. 20 strength 5 shots is actually going to cause a bit of a problem for most players. Added to this, both of these versions of scouts can have a sergeant that has a combi weapon, and maybe even a close combat weapon for melee, and you will end up finding that you can do quite a lot of damage for a unit that is relatively cheap in cost, very early on as well. Remember, you've got other units that are advancing on the enemy. Do they really want to deal with those aggressors, or do they want to deal with those scouts that are actually spiking their heavy weapons teams? So as I'm winding up the end of this video, the most important factor I'd like to leave you all with is a matter of expectation. What do you expect your scouts to achieve? It is incredibly important to know the limitations of scouts. They can't take as much damage or deal out as much damage as their larger, more experienced brethren. So, on that very basis, you should moderate your expectation accordingly. Don't expect your 20 scouts, all with shotguns, to just hammer into the opponent early game and wipe them off the board. It's just not going to happen, even with points invested into the sergeants to make them more killy. What it likely will achieve, though, is a heavy distraction and a little bit of damage to their weapons teams or their objective holders, or just generally causing a nuisance because the opponent has had to divert forces to deal with them, thus giving you a little bit of initiative and giving your main attacking force a little bit of a reprieve from the opponent's attention. On that note, I'm going to leave it there. We still don't know the full picture of the Space Marine Codex, and we don't know how scouts are going to be fully affected by it. They could have some stratagem support for all we know. They could even have some new character rules that are coming in to support them. In the meantime though, this is the information we have, and I think we should make the best use of it. That's it from me. Please like and subscribe to help support the channel and help it grow. I'll catch you all soon. Peace out.